There is so much more to clutter than physical things. And even though physical clutter is something that is important to address when you're ready to, um, I'm going to be talking about other types of clutter. Now, when it comes to energy, energy can affect you in a lot of different ways. And there's a spectrum. You can feel sluggish, you can feel weighed down energetically, you can also feel very uplifted and expansive energetically. And when you think of that scale in relation to the clutter in your life, the different types of clutter in your life, where are you on that scale? I want to help you figure out how to gauge that. Now, like I mentioned, there's so much more to clutter than the physical things. Yes, you can, there's the stuff in the garage, the stuff in the drawers, and that's just one aspect of it. But let's talk about some other forms of clutter and why it even blocks you energetically and what that even means. What does and how does your energy affect you, right? So I talked about this spectrum of having being weighed down energetically and feeling like you're sluggish, but then you can also feel on the other end very uplifted, very expansive, very light. And that's an easy way for you to gauge your energy when it comes to the physical aspects of it, like how that shows up for you physically, how your energy shows up for you physically. But what happens if you're feeling sluggish? What happens if you're feeling way down, right? You don't do as much. You're moving slower. You kind of end up with that mind fog and you're not thinking as clearly. It's harder to make decisions. You doubt yourself more. You're always tired. So, what happens when that's happening? Nothing is happening.
Hmm.
Nothing is happening when you're tired, when you're sluggish, or if something is happening, it's not to your best ability. Like you're stressed out, you're not in your most optimal place to get the things done or to even be creative or to network to be present in your life or for other people. So this is why it's so important to pay attention to where you're at on that scale energetically. Now, what happens when you're on the other end of that scale, when you are feeling expansive and light and uplifted energetically? You have a bit more confidence, you are more creative, you are more present in what's happening with throughout your day. It allows you to connect more efficiently. You're able to complete tasks more efficiently. You're able to expand your vision in a much better place on a much higher frequency than you could if you are vibrating on a low energy. Okay, so this can help you in so many different areas of your life. And if you only think of clutter as the physical stuff, then you are missing a lot of how this can weigh you down because physical things do hold energy. And yes, you can move things out of your space, reorganize things, throw things away, and that can help. But then there's other things that you can't physically see that are still cluttering your life, that are cluttering you mentally. And that's one of the first things I want to talk about. So, what are some of the things that can clutter you mentally? One of the first things is time. Time is something that it's you either you feel like you don't have enough of it or you feel like you push things off into this abyss of time that you think you're going to have later when at the end of the day ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got the time. The time that you're hoping to have later never seems to happen and never seems to show up. You never can find it, and then you're constantly in your mind about the time. Oh, I don't have the time for this. Oh, I need more time for that. Oh, I could do that later. And it will clutter your mind all the time. This happens with my clients. This has happened to me. Think about how often you are thinking about the time you have, the time you don't have, or the time you wish you had. Let me say that again. Think about how many times, How many times are you thinking about the time that you wish you had, the time that you don't have enough of, the time that you hope to have in the future, like versus looking at what you actually have in front of you now? Time is a huge clutter bug, okay? So that is one of the number one things when it comes to clutter that is not based on physical items. And I see it all the time, getting caught up in what you don't have time to do, what you do have time to do, what you wish you had time to do. So this can stress you out. It can also keep you in a loop. It can keep you in this pattern of, oh, I don't have the time. Oh, I'm gonna do this later, right? But then when you do actually have the time, you're exhausted. So I mentioned earlier that scale, that energetic scale, you're sluggish, you're weighed down, you're tired, you're exhausted, and sometimes you just don't feel like doing a damn thing, right? Which is fine. Sometimes you're at that point of burnout. Sometimes you get to the point where you are at complete decision fatigue. You don't want to make any decisions because you're like your battery is just run down, and all you can do is just sit on the couch and do nothing. Like, have you been there before? That has been me. Like, all you can do is sit down and just mindlessly scroll on whatever platform, social media platform you prefer, right? Or binge watch something on whatever streaming platform you prefer, right? So it's something that's constantly a thing. And you can't continue to avoid it. That's the thing too. Like, time is always something that you're going to have to deal with. You have to deal with time every day. And if you keep pushing things off into this abyss of the time that the time that you hope is there, then that's all you're doing is like you're just putting that time clutter on layaway. Y'all remember? I just found out there's a thing called there's like some new version of layaway now, but it's not like PayPal, or something else. I just found out about this. I'm behind the times, but like it's like you're just putting it on layaway to just, oh, I'm just going to be frustrated about this later. Oh, I'm just going to have to you're just building it up. And I my hope for you is with this video, with this information that you're getting right now, that you can take, if you can take one thing when it comes to time clutter, is to stop shoving all your crap into this future place of that's not going to be there. Where is it going? We have the same hours in a day, the 24 hours, right? How often are you going to continue to hope for more time? You have to look at what you're doing with your time now. And I'm not saying no, don't plan for things in the future. Don't create space for it, right? I talked about the importance of creating space in my previous video. Why you don't keep promises to yourself. So if you haven't checked out that video, be sure to do that. And I'll be sure to pin a link somewhere in the description so you can check that out. But this is not about creating space for the future, because that is important, but you have to look at what time do you have right now, because it's constantly creating that mental clutter, right? Your time clutter is creating the mental fog. Your time clutter is creating all the distractions, because you're not actually looking at what you're doing with your time. Not only are you not looking at what you're doing with your time, you're not looking at what you're not doing with your time. Everything is just like whatever's happening right in front of you. You're just like focusing on just anything that's just in the way. You're just reacting. I'm doing like this, like, okay, think about being in like a tennis court. Okay, so this is an example. You're in a tennis court, you have a tennis racket, and there's a tennis ball coming at you, and you're just hitting the tennis ball that's coming at you. You're just dealing with the situation as it comes, right? You only have time to react. You don't have time to really breathe and like really look at what's going on to even think about your next move. That's kind of what's happening when you're letting time happen to you versus allowing yourself to look at how you can be more efficient with your time. And it keeps you on an endless cycle. And you're going to stay on that end of the spectrum where you're exhausted, you're sluggish, you're not able to think as clearly. It's harder for you to make decisions because you're always out of time or you're not optimizing your time. So how can you change that? The first thing, one of the easiest things to do is actually just start looking at, just paying attention to what you're actually doing, like writing shit down is great. Using a note, like the notes in your phone, to really look at like, what are you actually doing? What time are you getting up during the day? What, like in the morning? What time are you going to bed at night? Have you ever sat, like, just thought about like, where did the time go? What did I actually do today? If you're not being intentional with what you're doing with your time, then yeah, you're going to end up doing whatever. And then you're never going to know what you did. You're going to be sitting there wondering, how come this didn't happen? Or when was I supposed to do this? And you're going to constantly feel like you're having to catch up, having to catch up, having to catch up. So start writing things down. Start using a planner, a calendar, your phone, and start looking at also planning out what needs to happen with your time during the day. What needs to happen? And when I'm talking about what needs to happen, I'm not just talking about the chores that you need to do or what you need to do for other people. I'm talking about the things that you need to do for yourself, the things that you need to move the needle in your life for your own personal growth goals, when it comes to your professional goals, when it comes to your health and fitness goals, when it comes to your spiritual goals, like whatever those things are. What are the things that you need to do that are going to make you better? Because anything that you're doing that's going to make you better is simultaneously going to make any other role that you play in your life, it's going to improve those roles too. Right? So if you're a mom and you're constantly like pushing off doing things for yourself, it's time to start looking at, what are you doing with your time throughout the day? Where can you find something, even if it's 5 minutes? If you're overworking yourself, listen, I was saying this the other day. How much energy are you putting into a job and you're putting yourself on the back burner? What happens if you get fired tomorrow? Then what? Don't hold up the things that you want to do in your life, right? Putting all this additional time. I'm not saying don't do your job. I'm saying if you're going above and beyond all the time, always for other people and for a job that's not pouring into you in the same way, you need to balance that out. Right? Think about that. Who's going to be there for you? So when it comes to the mind clutter, time is the biggest thing. And that is going to block you energetically. It's going to hold you back. It's going to slow you down. You're not going to be as efficient. You're not going to be as productive. And it's really going to get you to the point that can lead you to burnout and fatigue and constant frustration. It's an endless wheel. So the easiest way to start is by allowing yourself to actually look at what you are doing with your time, being intentional about it, and allow yourself to be honest with yourself. Look at where you're bullshitting. Look at it. Look at your shit and be like, damn, I've been bullshitting today. Okay. Yep. I've been spending 3 hours doing this. This is what I tend to be doing. Okay. Sometimes you just gotta like be honest with yourself, and not from a place of judgment, but just like you be realistic, right? The more you are realistic with yourself, the easier it is for you to start figuring out what that next step is so you can do something different. Because if you end up, and this is where people get stuck all the time. I hear people complaining about how, oh, they want things to change. Oh, they they want to do something different. Oh, they wish they could do this, but you're not actually looking at how you can start to do that. If you're continuing to do the same thing and you're not looking at how you can do something differently, then then it's always going to be a wish. Like, are you just talking? You just saying something to say something? Or do you actually want something to change in your life? Right? So you have to look at that. So let's talk about another form of clutter. Another form of clutter that blocks you energetically is emotional clutter. Mm, emotional clutter. Now, I did a video about this a while back that talks about using energy work, not energy work, shadow work, to sort through emotional clutter. So that's a video that might be helpful. I'll be sure to put that in the description as well. But let's talk about how this blocks you energetically. And this can also tie into like sometimes it shows up in physical things that you have. But and I'll give an example of that. So with emotional clutter, right? You can have things or people or an idea that you're holding on to. You're not willing to let that go. You're not ready to let that go because of the emotion that is tied to it. So it could be a thing, it can be a person, it can be an idea that you are emotionally tied to, and you're not at a place where you're even willing to let it go. And this idea, this person, or this thing is not actually serving you in the best way, and that's part of what makes it the clutter. It's like you're holding on to this, but to this idea, but you're not actually doing anything with this idea. You're not taking action with this idea. It just makes you feel good, or you feel like, oh well, no, once I get to this point in my life, then I can do this, and you're just hoping and wishing that one day it'll just magically happen. And that's actually blocking you because you're so focused on what could be. You're focused on what could be, but you're not looking at the things that you need to do now to get there, because you're only tuned into what that's going to feel like, and you're just holding on to the feeling but not looking at the reality of it, of what needs to happen to carry you to that point, right? So that's an example of how it can show up if it's an idea. And there's nothing wrong with having ideas and tuning into the feeling. You should do that. But if you're only focusing on what it feels like and you're not actually looking at how can I start to emulate this now? What do I need to start doing now in order to get to that? Then you're going to be stuck in delusion and in a dream. You're going to be in the dream world. You're going to be at that point where you're just like always in the future, never looking at how you can make it happen in the present moment. And then when you look at your current reality, it's almost like a culture shock, and you just don't understand. You cannot compute to why the life that you're wanting to manifest is not happening, because all you're doing is holding on to the what it feels like, the idea of the thing, but you're not taking the action that is required for you to manifest the thing, the idea, even if that idea is a better version of you. Don't just think about it. You have to put some action behind that. And I've seen that too many times, being cluttered with the dream of it, Because yeah, it feels good. It does. Like, oh man, oh I want to be this person, or oh, I want to do this in my life. Okay, you know it's possible, right? It doesn't have to just be a wish, or it doesn't have to just be a dream. It doesn't have to just be this idea. It can be something you can make a reality. And so, something to consider if you have this emotional clutter. This you want to feel good, but you don't want to actually do the things to feel good now, right? Because just being in that dream state, focusing on that idea of what you wish you had or what you could have, that feels better than actually doing something in the present state so you can experience those emotions now. Then yeah, it's cluttering your life. It's blocking you energetically. So something to think about. Now let's talk about another aspect of emotional clutter. So I talked about an example around, like, if there's an idea that you're tied to and you're not willing to let it go, but you're also not doing anything with the idea. You're just holding on to it because it feels good. You're not holding on. You're not housing this idea because it's something you're actively moving towards. You're housing it because it just feels good. Then how is that really serving you if you're not? It's just keeping you kind of in a dream state. Now, when it comes to people, mm, people, because people are cluttered too. Okay, and we're gonna talk about people even more in depth in a little bit. But let's talk about the emotional clutter in relation to people. Okay, public service announcement. Stop keeping people in your life that used to make you feel good and are no longer doing that. You're just hoping that one day that feeling that you used to have about this person is going to come back. Let that shit go. Let it go. Okay. And let me tell you why. If you are at a point where there are certain people around you and you no longer feel the same way, that doesn't mean, sometimes it's something with them that's changed. And sometimes it's something within you that has changed. You have grown in some way, you have changed, and they are in the same place they were when you met them. At some point, there's going to be people in your life where you're at this point, you're growing, expanding, and they're not. At first, you were on the same playing field, right? Energetically, I'm talking about energy now. And then things changed. You grew, you expanded, and then they got to a certain point, and that hey, that's where they're at in their lives. So maybe so now something is not in sync anymore. And if you keep holding on to the emotions that were that were there when y'all were both here, and now you don't have those same emotions, those things aren't the same, and you're just hoping, you keep bringing yourself down, bringing your energy down to be around this person, then how was that serving you? Let's go back to the spectrum that I talked about, that energy spectrum, that low vibrating, sluggish, worn down, tired, right? Feeling drained. If you're feeling that way when you are with this person, when you're talking to this person, then something is out of sync. And so where that emotional clutter is holding you up, how it's blocking you energetically, is you keep bringing yourself down to that level energetically because of the past, because of emotions from the past. You feel like, oh man, well, this person, held me down at this point, which is great, right? And you feel some kind of way about that, and you really appreciate and love the memories and all those great things. And you can always honor that, but you don't have to feel bound to a person, or even to feel bound to the dynamic of the relationship staying the way it was if it's no longer that, because you have changed or that person has changed, whatever it is. Maybe that person has grown and elevated and expanded in some way, and you're not there. You're still here, and they're up here. Maybe that's the case. Either way. So what that could look like is, man, this person is just doing different things or whatever. You might feel you might feel a bit guilty. You might feel a bit left behind if you're that person where you're kind of stuck in a place. You see this person doing these other things in their life, or maybe they're just acting funny. I don't know, right? You tell me. But just something has shifted in the dynamic of the relationship, but emotionally you feel like obligated. And I'm here to tell you that all you're doing is blocking yourself, because that person, if you're not in a place where you're ready to grow, and that person is not helping you, not necessarily helping you. I'm not talking about like a handout, right? But if energetically you feel drained when you're around that person, and if it's not that relationship, that the dynamic of that relationship is not serving you in the way that it was, then it's time to change the dynamic. Whether that means that person needs to be out of your life, or whether that means changing that level of his lives. Maybe before you all were super close, spent time every day, and maybe now it's not as much. Maybe you have other, like, it's just you, the way that that you felt obligated before, it just needs to change, right? So sometimes clutter doesn't always mean that you have to um, throw something away, right? Or give it away, right? You don't have to donate it. Sometimes it's just changing the functionality of it, changing its purpose. What is this person's purpose in your life, right? What it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it might change now because you're different now. They're different now. So their purpose might change. How you can best show up for each other might change. Things change and evolve, and that's okay, right? But if you are holding on, staying in this place because of emotions from the past and from the glory days, it's like, no, like, who are you as individuals now? Emotional clutter will keep you in the past. It can very much keep you in the past of, oh, well, this is how it felt, and let me just stay right there. I see this happen a lot with people that I work with that are wanting to focus on like health and fitness, or even changing certain things in their lives, right? Like with career, you go back to when you had that. Oh, well, back during this time of my life, everything was great. Like, your responsibilities are different now. You're different now. So same thing with people. Same thing with like things in your home. So how emotional clutter can show up with things like you're not willing to let this thing go. You're not letting this go. You're holding on to this thing because of the memory. But how is that memory serving you? Or how is this, like, does this fit in your life right now? And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to throw the thing away, that physical thing, or all like the cards and the paper. Oh my gosh, for me, like physical clutter, I have so much paper. Paper. Oh my gosh. Just so much. And I'm like, oh, I need that. It's like, girl, let it go. So I have to go through these like stages of, shredding and burning, but I digress, right? But any emotional ties you have to physical things, like if it's not like clothes, if you're holding on to clothes from like when you were like 20 years old and you're like 30, 40, like, I mean, why are you holding on to that? Are you wearing it? You can have a couple of t-shirts or something, but like if closet is overfilled and your dresser drawers are overfilled with stuff from decades ago, it's like, how is that? What is the emotional tie to those items? And are you holding on to the item because you're using it, because of the functionality of it, or are you just holding on to it because of the feeling of it? It makes you feel good because it reminds you of those things. But how is that blocking you energetically? Well, now you are taking up space with the past. You're taking up space in your current environment with items with items, right, that are harnessing emotions from the past. And you might even use that as an excuse. One of my favorite excuses is which one that I use is like, oh, I'm going to need that one day. I'm going to need that one day. Oh, well, what if what if one day then this happens? It's like I'm creating the scenarios, and I have to check myself when that happens, right? But most of the time, it's like if you're not letting things go, and you're holding all these things in your physical space, look at the emotions that's connected to it, and it's blocking you energetically because things hold on to energy. And if you want to bring new things into your life, if you want things to shift, you need to clear those things out in your physical space, in your emotional space, and in your mental space. So I've been talking about the types of clutter that block you energetically. I talked about the mental clutter, which is around time. Time is the biggest form of mental clutter. And then I also talked about emotions, and I'm breaking down emotions into these three different areas of how emotions show up, if it's an idea, and how that emotional clutter shows up, how it shows up if it's with people, but then also with things. And it will keep you on that spectrum of either bringing you down, right? Creating these barriers, it's weighing you down. How can you bring new things into your life if you're still holding on, right? If I'm holding on to something, I'm holding on to my phone, right? I'm holding on to this, right? If somebody wants to give me something, oh, here's a new opportunity, but I refuse to let this go, then how can I grasp that new thing? And that's kind of what it's like when you are holding on to clutter, whether it is the mental clutter, the emotional clutter, or physical clutter, right? But oftentimes, if you have clutter with people, with ideas, with physical things, it's oftentimes based on emotions. There's an emotional link to it. So with people, sometimes it's not about throwing these people away. Sometimes these people just need to be demoted. Sometimes they need to be promoted. Sometimes you need to bring new people into your space, or change. You're just changing the dynamic of the relationship. Of any type of relationship, this can be professional relationship, friendships, romantic. It doesn't matter. So something to think about. And yeah, that has been the topic of the day. Let me check the comments here. Hey, Joe, don't call me out like that. Listen, it'd be like that. It'd be like that. So I hope that what I've talked about today has been helpful. And I will definitely, actually, while I'm doing this right now, if you are at a point where you are feeling like you are experiencing energetic blockages, then let me know in the comments. Is this something that you're experiencing? Do you feel like it's around the mental clutter and time, or do you feel like it's around emotions and ideas and thoughts? The emotions linked to people, or emotions linked to physical things? Definitely let me know. And I will post in the description the videos that I mentioned as additional resources. So around emotional clutter, I did a video around shadow work for that. So if you're into shadow work, then that's something that could be helpful for you. And then when it comes to time and creating space with time, then the video that I did around why you don't keep promises to yourself, that could be a very helpful video. So I'll be sure to post that as well. And I will be here again next week, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Central, that's 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time for another live show. And you can always connect with me on other platforms. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Clubhouse, and you can always connect with me on my website, ujowajet.com. And it has been a pleasure. Let me know what your key takeaways were. And be sure to like this video if you liked it. Share this video if you think it's going to be helpful for someone else. And other than that, I will see you on the next one.